It's 10:31, so there, Julie, we're leaving the floor for you. Go for
Hello,
it.
hi. Good morning, everyone. Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was such an amazing way to start this conference. I was not sure what to expect, and I think that that personal experience outside of academia felt like such a warm and wonderful place to begin. I have a trans teen, and I am in the classroom, sometimes teaching in French, sometimes in English. And just the focus on gender, I feel, is so important to rethink how we interact as human beings. I find myself even critiquing the Trader Joe's employees for calling me miss or ma'am, or even just use any of those terms. I'm like, why are we still doing this anyway? So one of the first things I do when I talk to my class is say, you know, I'm not madame. So whatever you learned in high school, like, let's move on. Okay, so anyway, and they get it and they like it for the most part. So anyway, I'm pleased to be here today. I'm going to share my screen to introduce our first speaker. We will be proceeding as individual talks. So I will be, because we have the first person unfortunately was not well, I have heard that we will get slides from that speaker, but we'll proceed one after the next, and then we'll have a open discussion, okay? So our first speaker is Wei Kimberly Tao from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And their talk is Transgender Storytelling Workshops, a discourse analysis of students' attitudes towards transgender individuals. Okay, so I will stop share and allow our speaker to share their screen, should they wish.
So, hello everyone, and can you guys hear me? Okay, thank you for the introduction. So I guess I can start talking, right? Okay, so hello everyone. So I'm from Hong Kong. So now it's 1:30 a.m. I think. Yeah. So so hello everyone. So I'm here to talk about a topic which is, I mean, you have already seen the topic. So I just want to say that this project is funded by one of the faculty development scheme under the Research Grants Council. So for today's talk, I'm going to talk about some of the data that we have been collecting so far by doing a transgender storytelling workshop with our college students. So the idea is that we asked the transgender speakers to come to our school and they share their own stories, their love stories, or some challenges that they are facing in the society. And after that, our students actually, I mean, before that, the students wrote reflections on their understanding of transgender individuals, and after attending the workshop they also they need to write another post reflections on the transgender workshops. So now let me start with my presentations. So Barner's model of ecological university called for universities to significantly broaden their roles, intertwining their core activities with broader societal and environmental objectives. In this framework, an institution recognizes its deep interconnectedness with the global community and acknowledges that this relationship is reciprocal. The university impacts the world just as the world shapes the university. The principle of ecological university leads us not only to seek to create a more compassionate and inclusive society, but also to consider gender inclusive sexuality education in our curricula. So in Hong Kong, this understanding places university So in Hong Kong, this understanding places university at a pivotal juncture, tasked with navigating between traditional conservatism and also emerging progressivism in the realm of sexuality education. So the broader landscape of sexuality education in Hong Kong is characterized by a cautious approach, often confined within the bounds of absentees, which can lead to fear and shame rather than understanding when it comes to discussion about sexuality. So furthermore, topics concerning gender and sexual minorities are seldom or almost never integrated into the curriculum due to the discomfort and controversies that may invoke among schools and parents. Yet, as scholars like Plummer and Weeks have argued, discussion about sexuality and gender should be inherently more fluid and diverse, inviting open discourses. It is against this backdrop of resistant restraints and over simplicity that this paper introduced a transgender narrative workshop as an innovative pedagogical tool within the tertiary education curriculum, devised to bridge the gap and enhance the understanding and acceptance of gender diversity in the local context. So for the research question, we asked two questions for this paper. So the first is, to what extent can transgender narrative workshop fosters empathy and understanding towards transgender individuals amongst Hong Kong university students? The second question we asked, to what extent do students pre and post workshop reflections reveals changes in empathetic character traits as well as shifts in attitudes and empathetic responses due to their participation in the transgender narrative workshop? So Rai argues for the transformative potentials of workshops that includes interactions with transgender individuals, since such encounters are uncommon in students' daily lives. So the authors underscores the threat of personal encounters with transgender individuals within the students' populations, accentuating the imperative need for experiential educations. According to the Association for Experimental Educations, it highlights that experiential education is anchored in students' direct experiences and subsequent introspection to facilitate knowledge constructions, skills nurturing, and values refinement. Expanding on this conceptual framework, Wright also suggests that a key approach to facilitating these transformation involves combining education with direct exposure to transgender individuals in education setting. So since 2014, my colleagues and I have integrated transgender narrative workshops into the curriculum of gender and sexuality related courses, running them in every semester. So the workshop is dedicated to creating an inclusive environment and a safe space that allows students to directly interact with and deepen their understanding of transgender individuals' life experiences. Given the limited representation of transgender narratives in societal discourse and the frequent misrepresentations by media in Hong Kong, this workshop is designed as a platform that foregrounds authentic transgender voices. It enables students to engage with and learn from the first-hand experiences of the transgender community. It also aims to bridge the gap between textbook theories and real-world experiences, thus transforming traditional classroom dynamics into interactive learning environments that celebrate diverse human stories. With students primarily ranging from 18 to 20 years in age and coming from various academic backgrounds, the workshop complements the standard 39 hours of coursework through a mandatory 2 hours interactive section. In conjunction with local transgender advocacy groups, we also create a speaker panel representing a spectrum of ages and experiences within the transgender community. Primarily conducted in Cantonese, the workshop content is divided into two main parts: an educational segment that addresses medical policy and societal issues related to transgender individuals in Hong Kong, and a personal narrative segment where guest speakers share their own stories. These personal stories cover a range of experiences, including sharing coming up experiences with loved ones, navigating challenges in forming and maintaining romantic relationships, and confronting persistent struggles related to societal norms and gender identity. So this approach provides a comprehensive perspective on transgender individuals' experiences. This workshop concludes with a question and answer sections where the students may delve deeper into the speaker's experiences. This engagement should promote a dynamic exchange of ideas, further enhancing students' understanding of transgender experiences and fostering open dialogues within the educational setting. So as you can see from the screen, we have this Quartz organization. So Quartz in Chinese is called Quarting Sihat. So it's one of the local transgender organizations in Hong Kong. So we have been working with Quartz for over the past few years. So they actually invited speakers to come to our schools, and some of like their chairmen, their core members, they always come to our school and deliver the talk. So before attending the workshops, and students were asked to submit pre-workshop reflection. And after attending the workshop, students are also required to submit post-workshop reflections. So they have to submit it 2 weeks before and after the workshop. And this submissions of the pre and post-workshop reflection is part of their assessment. So the course assessment. So the pre and post assignment questions were identical, but we have to mention that we have already briefed it or told our students that they are political stance or whether they support or not support the topics that we have been covering, it would not affect their grades. So what we wanted them to share is their genuine, authentic feelings. So following Robson's days and Nick Post, the assignment question asked our students the following. So the first, what did the term transgender mean to them? What did students believe caused it transgender? How would they comment on the media representations of transgender individuals, and how did they feel about meeting a transgender person in real life? So currently we just did a pilot study to analyze around 130 students' assignments, so including pre and post reflections. So in total, we have around 91,000 words were collected for analysis. So the main corpus was divided into 2 subcorporal. We have before and after, and compare based on the main linguistic dimensions from Linguistic Inquiry Word Count 22 that are closely related to attitudes, emotions, and empathy. So based on the theoretical contributions to queer linguistic perspective by Mochen Spacher, Sourcens contends that there are 3 central intersecting concerns that have surfaced as pertinent in research employing a queer applied linguistic framework. So these primary concerns comprise temporality, spatiality, and normativity. So we are trying to use this framework to make sense of the findings that we gathered from the pre-post students' reflections. So for temporality, it means encourage exploring language practices situated in non-normative temporal domains to understand sexual identities. So here is actually advocating for the study of language as it is used in contexts that do not align with traditional or mainstream conceptions of time. This could involve looking at language use across different historical periods. So this approach recognizes that the way we talk about sexuality isn't fixed, but can change depending on when and where it is being discussed. So for spatiality, Melanie examines how spatial and linguistic elements combine to form sexual identity within university settings. And also Hall also argues that the concept of heteronormativity, which is the assumption that heterosexual relationships are the default or normal mode of sexual orientation, does not have a fixed meaning, but rather changes depending on the societal context. It emphasizes that to understand the experiences of queer individuals properly, it is crucial to consider how different spaces can influence the perceptions and implications of heteronormative norms. Concerning normativity, it means that despite the individual's differences and variability within the community, Mochen Spacher notes that there is a communal trend towards an assumed shared understanding of normativity, despite its variability. This indicates that members act as if they have a common grasp of these norms. However, it is important for us to acknowledge that what is considered normative does not have a constant or universally accepted definitions, especially when it comes to linguistic studies. We are reminded with the importance of considering how various factors such as time, physical environment, meaning space, and societal norms interact with each other to form a backdrop for studying heteronormativity. So due to the time constraint, I can't give you a full set of data analysis of our reflections. So for this purpose, I have selected a set of data which reflects students' affects, the components of affects. So as you can see, after the data analysis, we can see that if we compare pre-workshop reflections with post-workshop reflections, we can see that students actually use more negative tone and also swear, or we can say slur words in the pre-workshop reflections. And for the negative tone, it actually refers to the society's common practices like rejection, refusal, or terms like sick, threats, or like aggressiveness, like terms like aggressive, angry, anger, assault, and other negative attitudes of the general public surrounding emotions like anxiety, fear, uncomfortable behaviors, like you have brainwashing, betrayal, bully, cheating, and like phenomena like contentious, dangerous prospect, evil images, etc. So it's portraying the largely negative perceptions on transgenderism. So instead of curse word, we are like we're focusing on the swear words and slurs, and we can see students using more of these words in the pre-workshop reflections. So these words refers to the taboo words related to the transgender community, like female, tranny, sissy, etc. It is, however, important to note that these words do not entirely represent our students' viewpoints when they're writing the workshop, because some of them they're quoting from others. So like the perceptions of other people, maybe say, oh, some shouting. So these are our students' words saying that, oh, some shouting the word female, or this could be called as a faggot, etc. So they're also quoting the wordings from the media. So swear words associated with transgender individuals carry an additional weight of being harmful and hateful due to their discriminatory nature. So our finding shows that before, if we look at the temporality elements, so before attending the workshop, there is a high occurrence of tone negative, so negative tone, and the use of swear words or slurs that are specifically derogatory towards the transgender community, which suggests a temporal alignment with societal norms, at least as documented in the pre-workshop reflections, that has historically been transphobic and discriminatory. So this could reflect the temporal contingent nature of these negative attitudes. And for the after the workshop reflections, so we can see there is a noted decrease in negative tone. So and the positive emotional markers, so they are more positive in terms of the emotions. So suggesting a temporal shift in participant attitudes. So this could indicate an influence of the workshops in reorienting participants' perspective towards a more inclusive viewpoints. So Lieb and Moschin-Speicher's concept of non-normative temporal domains can be applied here, signifying that the workshop may have opened up alternative temporal space where participants could reflect and possibly deviate from the normative transphobic discourses. Concerning spatiality, so educational setting, like the one where the workshop takes place, are key spatial contexts for identity formations. So the spatial elements of being in a workshop designed to address issues of gender and sexuality likely contribute to shifts in the linguistic expressions of aspect. So as spatial context influences social constructs of sexuality, it is plausible that the workshop created a safe space for reflection and learning away from external heteronormative pressures, allowing for shifts in language use that might not be seen outside such an educated setting. So, and for normativity, the pre-workshop data reflects a societal default to normative negative language about transgender individuals, likely mirroring broader societal prejudice. And for post-workshop data, it suggests a critical examination and possible deconstructions of normativity. The reduced use of negative tone and swear words in the post-workshop reflection may illustrate a move away from a linguistically normative stance towards a non-normative or counter-normative perspective. So, which aligns with Moschin-Speicher's recommendations for critical scrutiny of normativity in linguistic practices. So in short, pre-workshop reflections, we can see negative effects and swearing decreases significantly, suggesting participants held negative views, views per racial reflections that have since been somewhat mitigated. However, given that the effect size are small, the extent of attitudinal change should be cautiously interpreted. So in post-workshop reflection, there is an increase in positive emotions, denote a potential increase in empathy or understanding toward transgender individuals following the workshop. So the significant increase in anxiety-related words in the post-workshop reflections might reflect a newfound awareness and empathetic concern for the transgender community's challenges rather than direct feelings of this. So you can see that they have like more empathy. So yeah, that's it for my part. And thank you so much for your kind attention. So if you have any questions, we can talk after the other two talks. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kimberly. That was so fantastic. I hope we have a conference proceedings publication in our minds. I'd love to read that paper as well. I was chatting with Ben about that. So our next speaker is Pardis Amiridahaj from the Bahá'í Institute for Higher Education. And I look forward to bringing all of these together in our discussion. So I'm now going to, we're going to move to the last talk. And this is, Ilan Yana from Middlebury College and Pressman Academy, and they will be speaking on the gender fluid student as a, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know how I did that. Whoa. Okay. Whoops. Hello. Gender fluid student as a second language learner.
Good morning from LA. I'll share my screen. Is it possible to share screen? Yes.
Yes.
Here. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the organizer. Thank you, Wes, in the morning to set up a nice frame for the day. My name is Ilan. I'm writing my dissertation in Middlebury College, and I'm an instructional coach and Hebrew teacher at Pressman Academy. My research is about gender, identity, and second language. I did it with my graduate, my master. I wrote about the different role in community and how gender changed that, changed the roles. And I think I'm going to start with two stories. One was when I was teaching kindergarten. I had a student who started the year identified as a girl. Her name was Lucy. And throughout the year, she decided that she's not Lucy, she's Luke. And her appearance changed accordingly. And the biggest question was, okay, so now that you change or you identify differently than a girl, how are we going to teach Hebrew, which is very gendered language? And second, it's happened in the same summer. I was teaching at Middlebury College, and there was a student, a college student who studied Hebrew as a second language, identify as they, them. And when she realized how limiting the language is to the identity she was identified with, she was so frustrated that she left the class and decided that they don't want to continue in this program. Not because the program is not good, but because the language is so limiting. In my research, I'm checking the connection between the gender, identity, and second language, which in my case, I'm checking Hebrew. In my research, I have, well, I'll start with the questions. The big questions that I'm asking are, how do non-binary students express their identity in a binary language that they are learning? So I mainly worked with students who are English is their first language, or is low on gender in the language itself. And when they studied a very gendered language, what happened to their identity, how it's come to life. I heard earlier in the morning bus, and it was a great segue when he said that when people referred to him as a man, he felt the euphoria of success, and people recognized him for what he is, and not using any other pronouns that he doesn't identify with. Second question that I ask, of one of the many, is do things they learn in class work outside of the classroom? So I'm teaching with a proficiency approach, and as you probably know, when you're teaching the language, you don't want the language to stay in the classroom, but you want your students to use it outside of the classroom. Now, because I'm teaching Hebrew, my question, or I checked with the students that my subject in the research is, when they're going outside of the classroom, when they're visiting Israel, do people refer to them with a pronoun, or what pronoun people refer to them? Quick explanation about the research that I'm doing. I interviewed 6 people who are identified as transgender or gender fluid people. And one of the first questions I asked them is, how do they define identity? Because identity has a lot of definition, and the 2 main ideas of identity in second language, when someone's studying a second language, is either they are using their existing identity, something that they start building around age 1 year old, and build on that when they're studying a second language, or they're creating a totally new identity in the new language. So 2 school of thoughts. One of them is Norton, who is saying that you build on what you have, versus Black, who's saying, no, you're starting all over again, starting from scratch. The definition I used for identity in my research was a person identity is the way a person perceives themselves, the way their environment perceives them, and it's always with negotiation according to the context. So it's dependent who I'm talking with, or what's the context of my conversation, and that's how my identity is come to life. So I'm sure not everybody putting their the pronouns as a username in every Zoom that they going in. Hebrew is a very gendered language. There's no way to be ambiguous when you speak in the language. When you're speaking Hebrew, it's everywhere. It's the way the tense, the verbs, the description. In Hebrew, we also have something that's called grammatical gender, that we genderize even objects. So table or room, they're all genderized. I wrote a paper about that too, and it's make it easier to refer to things later during the conversation when you genderize them. I'll be happy to explain about that another time. When I checked with the people who participate in my study, how does it make them feel when the language is so genderized and they're trying to avoid the gender? I'll give a nickname. Pat said that it's a form of linguistic violence. That's how they felt about the fact that Hebrew is so genderized. Sydney said, it's almost like the language is saying that your identity is not welcome here. And one more person said, well, actually, that was in a conference that I presented some of the stuff. And one of the people said, so why should my language adjust to your identity? Why don't you adjust your identity to my language? So basically, there are people in both ends. There are people who are trying to change the language. And as we know, language have people, the speakers who creating, who change the language, and people who controlling from above who are trying to suppress all the changes and try to keep it conservative. The struggle between the progressive and the conservative in the language in Hebrew, the interpersonal, when I'm walking into a room and the room is full of people, my way to go, I'll use a masculine tense. So I'll welcome everybody with a bruchim abahim, which is a suffix for masculine. In the last couple of decades, there are some feminists who are trying to change that and trying to create more feminine language that include everybody in the language. Happily, the queer theory is kind of coming from the feminist theory, and they're all working together to create the change and make sure that everybody will be inclusive, because in the way of transgender, gender fluid people, if the language will accept welcoming everybody in a feminine way, then they'll feel included too. So some of the solution I'm trying and checking, and I heard from some of the people who participate in, is first thing they would like people to do is check for the pronoun. I know we heard earlier that don't check the pronoun because not everybody is comfortable with that, but that's what people said, that check the pronoun, and that's what we're offering teachers to do at the beginning of the semester, to check the pronoun with their students and see if they identify themselves with one pronoun. That's easier for them, because it will be easier to study the language and move on. It also will be easier for their peer to understand them, because when you're creating sentences that is blend gender, like masculine and feminine in the same sentence or even plural, it's confused the receiver of the message, and they don't really understand who is whom, definitely as a language learner. In case of a blend or more than one pronoun, for example, there's, as we heard earlier, there are people identify as they, his. That's possible, but it's I divided into two, to the productive and receptive skills in the language. And the productive will be, I'll go with the receptive because it's easier. With the receptive one, listening. So if the students, actually all students should be exposed to listening to podcasts talking about gender fluid, transgender people, or mixed pronouns. There are some in Hebrew too. And it's, even if there are no students in the class that are transgender or gender fluid people, I would like my students to be exposed to the idea that it existed. And if they come across a person who identify different than what they think, they'll know how to behave. Same thing with reading. Read stories. There are some great stories about people who are doing changes, who are identify differently or use different pronouns. With the productive skills, it's a little bit challenging, and I divided those into the writing and speaking. With writing, it's easier. So a lot of people use the dot for the suffix plural. So the suffix for plural masculine will be im, and the suffix plural for feminine will be ot. And we see it a lot in summer camps here in the States, that they kind of blend it all together. So if I want to say we eat, ochlim, ochlimot, olchimot. So that's one way. There's, I know that later today, Michal Shomer will go to talk, and she has a great font that kind of blend masculine and feminine. Needs some practice to read it, but when you get used to it, it's doing a great job. With speaking, it's a little bit more challenging because then we have less time to process. So we're speaking faster than we are writing, and usually the receiver of our messages would like to get faster respond. Over there are some options like using past tense singular or using declaratives that will help them not to mark gender on what they are saying. To conclude and to look at, so we talked about the identity and how people define their identity, how people build their identity. Gender in Hebrew, which is challenging but doable. Some strategies how to do it in Hebrew, and some of them are working. From what I heard from people who visit in Israel, the experience overall was well to communicate in Hebrew in Israel, and people talk to them or refer to them in the language, in the right language, the right pronouns. With looking ahead, what we're preparing, part of the stuff that we're doing as language teacher is prepare our students to OPIs, oral proficiency interviews. Some of them do need that, and I think educating the interviewer about how to create an interview that will be inclusive and all gender will feel comfortable doing it. Thank you.